Hello and welcome. You find yourself checking out the Vortex Venom 5-25x56. This features a 34mm main tube, comes in about 35 ounces, features the EBR-7C reticle, is first focal plane, and does not have illumination. So it doesn't have illumination. Does that make this optic bad? Well, quite the contrary. I feel that the fact that it doesn't have illumination means that Vortex was able to really fine-tune everything else on this thing to keep it within the price point. One thing you will note is around 8 to 10x on this thing, you will notice some shadows coming in at the corners, and that's because I pushed this thing to its limits so we can have the perfect view through it from minimum maximum magnification and the smallest amount of scope body that we can see. Anyway, let's check out the turrets. No, clearly these turrets do not lock. There is a little bit of play, but once you take that up, it clicks right into the next notch absolutely perfectly. They have a great feel and sound to them. Now, it's not 100% 25, it's like 22-ish, because my throw lever is hitting my rail, and I don't have an Allen key small enough to take it to its maximum. But as you can see here, this thing lines up perfectly well, like perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Holy shit. That thing tracks so far perfectly. All right, let's keep going. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, exactly 10 mils. We have a slight discrepancy of less than 1/10 of a mil. As you can see, we're just jogging on either side of that line, but that could be just slight misalignment on my part. So as you saw, the tracking on this thing is basically perfect. Another thing on this thing that's basically perfect is the numbers on the side focus. I know for many of you that doesn't really matter, but focusing our attention on this 30-yard power transformer, I dial it into about 30 yards, and you can see we have basically a perfect image here at 25x. I want to do the exact same thing for the brick building, the power transformer, and 1,000 yards, and basically everything else in between. I know for a lot of you it doesn't really matter if the numbers on the side focus really line up, but for me it's really nice to know that Vortex at least spent the time to make sure that it did. The image here at 30 yards, so far it looks absolutely fantastic. There's a little bit of chromatic aberration that you can see popping up over those ceramic caps on those black power lines, and that's really it. The wood has a lot of definition and a lot of character to it that is easily portrayed here through this $500 optic. Moving our attention to the 400-yard brick building, you see we have a very beautiful looking image. The image is flat to the eye. You can't really see any sort of distortion whatsoever. Unfortunately though, the field of view is slightly lacking. You might not notice it, but here we're only rated at about 21.2 feet at 100 yards. The PST Gen 2 5-25, for example, is about 24.1, and keep in mind, the PST only has a 30mm tube and a 50mm front objective, and the Razor HD 4.5-27 is rated at 25.3 feet, which makes sense because it's, well, 4.5x. Before I zoomed into 25x, I did adjust the side focus like I did earlier to about 360 meters, which is more or less where it would have to be. And as you can see, we have a pretty damn good image. I'm fumbling around a little bit because the exit pupil on this thing does get a little on the tight side. And to get it 100% right, I did have to tweak it just a little bit. Once that's all taken care of though, you can see we have a very fantastic looking image. Yeah, sure, there's a tiny bit of chromatic aberration on that parapet wall against the bricks, but other than that, it looks absolutely fantastic. Honestly, the best thing about this though is the color representation. As you're about to see, against one of its main competitors, the ARKEN SH4 Gen 2, granted it was a very overcast day when I filmed with that thing quite some time ago, The colors just never really popped with the ARKEN. And keep in mind, these are both made in China, so it's not like one's got some super stellar glass and the other one doesn't. They're both probably made in, I wouldn't say the same factory, but probably like neighboring factories. Now, no, these are not, I would say, direct competitors. They're very, very close, though. As in, the ARKEN is a 6-24 as opposed to a 5-25, and the ARKEN does have illumination, albeit not very great illumination. The reticles are going to be completely down to personal preference. I think I like the EBR-7C a little bit more on the Venom. It's worked out fantastic for me in my usage with it. But ultimately, look at the colors that you see here. Even if it was an overcast and slightly gray day, it should still have better colors than what the ARKEN is producing currently. And if you go back and watch that review, yeah, it was pretty good for the price, but at the time I hadn't gotten my hands on either the Venom or the next competitor, the Athlon BTR Gen 2 6-24. Again, the lighting was a little bit different, but the Athlon does have a little bit better color representation as opposed to the ARKEN, plus it's got a little bit better build quality in my opinion. Except for, I'd say, the locking turrets are really, really tight on the elevation, and I really wish the screw that held the cap onto the erector had a couple more threads in there, but you could watch that full review and understand that for yourself. Again, reticles are both really good. The Athlon was in MOA, it was not in mil, so it's not a direct one-to-one, but it was a very good optic for, again, the price, which is right in line with what this Venom costs. Now, if you do want illumination, yeah, that's something to consider, but also you can consider the Strike Eagle 5-25 by 56, which you'll be seeing very, very soon. I do have one of those in for review, and it will be going head-to-head with this Venom. But believe it or not, those two are actually fairly dissimilar in more ways than one. But here, between these two, I would pick the Venom all day long. As far as low light transmission, it is clearly after dusk. Taking it, again, through its magnification range all the way up to its maximum, you can see once we get to 25, despite how dark it is, there wasn't that much of a huge shift in the brightness coming through the optic. And that is what's important. This is a 34mm tube with a 56mm front objective, and as you've already seen, very good glass, and it's really nice to see that there's very little parasitic loss as far as light transmission on this thing, even when the sun's well over the horizon. So, if you're looking for something that's going to allow a lot of light in, this is an option. Again though, if you need illumination, you gotta go somewhere else. Making our way to 1,000 yards, you can see that we have again a beautiful looking image. The side focus was set at around infinity for those of you wondering. There's nothing to really complain about with this. But like I've said on numerous occasions, if you're shooting out that far, you're not going to be dialed to 0 elevation gain. You're going to be dialing a couple of mils. So on all of my reviews that I do on this, I add 10 mils of added elevation. And like I had said earlier, the exit pupil can be kind of tight on this. Like I had explained earlier, it's because I have this thing right at the edge of where we can look through it perfect and have a small body. But as we zoom it back into 25x, you can see that it's clearly gotten a lot darker. I adjust the height on the camera looking through it a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, and you can see we have a decent view looking through it, but it's nowhere near as good as what it was without added elevation. Putting the two side by side, you can clearly see which one is which. The one on the left is 0 mils, the one on the right is 10 mils. Now the image on the right is still more than usable, but it's nowhere near as crisp and as clear as the one on the left with 0 mils added elevation. For those of you wondering, the 0 on this thing is set for 50 yards for a 22 LR, so it's already got a little bit more added elevation than what you would need for, let's say, a 223 at 100 yards. At 5x, you can clearly see how much we had to shift it. I get it just about right, and I decided to clock around the elevation turret just a little bit to give you guys a better sense of what you could expect with the exit pupil on this thing. It's honestly this thing's Achilles heel so far. But again, this is only a $500 optic, and you can get it way cheaper than that. I've seen them on sale for low to mid 4s, and I actually got this thing refurbished for $375. And for that price, it blows my mind how good this thing is. At the 50-yard line, we are focusing on a precision F-class target at 5x. I bring it up to an indicated 10x, which is just at that point where the image starts to get a little barrel distortion and shadows in the far extreme corners. Now, is the image still usable? It is. Can you move your eye a little bit closer to it and have that go away? Absolutely. Why didn't I do that? I'm an idiot. I'm an ass. What do you want from me? At least I'm telling you, though, that I'm an ass, so no one can say anything about me not admitting it. Anywho, I continue increasing the magnification 5x intervals. Why? Just to give you guys a better sense of how this thing performs in the middle range magnifications. Because despite the fact it's a 5 to 25, it's still first focal plane. So you could run this at any magnification and have the drops line up perfectly, or theoretically perfectly. On the side focus, again, it was set for 50 yards, and despite my best attempts to try to fine tune it, it doesn't really yield that much of a better image. I really think this optic performs extremely well at all distances, including this close here at 50 yards. And the 7C reticle, I think, would be perfectly fine for even shooting an F-class competition like this. That center dot is so fine, you could put it right in the middle of those very, very small targets and be able to make good hits. The sun comes out of the very heavy cloud coverage from that day and washes out the image a little bit, but that's the only reason why you see so much purple fringing. On to the all-important Eyebox test. It might not be that important with an HPVO because typically you're going to have a really good cheek weld. But if you don't, at 5x, at least you know that you're going to be able to get behind it and have a very forgiving view through this thing. Honestly, it's better than most LPVOs at 5x. Bringing it up to 10x though, and this is where it starts to get tight because, again, it's an HPVO after all, it's only so good it could perform. But I brought it up to 10x to show you guys that, yeah, we can fine-tune it a little bit to get it better, but it is going to start getting tight. From there, I just blow it up to 25x, because at this point, it doesn't matter. On an HPVO like this, you have to have a good cheek weld if you're going to look through it. Basically, anything above its minimum, just the way it is. You're not going to be 360 no-scope headshotting people left and right with this thing. You got to be deliberate with it in all of its actions. So see, why didn't you compare this to any of its brothers? We know that you have two Razor HDs at home, a PST 3 to 15, and you just mentioned you had a Strike Eagle 5 to 25. Where's the comparison video to that? Well, I'm going to be doing a gigantic comparison video comparing the entire Vortex lineup. I might even throw in a Diamondback Tactical, even though getting behind those things for the money, I'd much rather recommend everybody bump up to this or even the Strike Eagle 5 to 25 because it is a vastly superior optic than the Diamondback in every single way, shape, and form for honestly not that much more money. So yeah, you're going to have to wait around for that because I have to do a lot of filming for this, the Strike Eagle, the Razor 4.5 to 27, and a newly acquired PST Gen 2 5 to 25 by 50, which I have not even opened the box yet. So I got a lot of stuff going on, but those four are going to be going head to head, and maybe another surprise Razor will show up and be part of that entire comparison. And the main focus will be how good of a Vortex product can you get for your budget? It might sound like I'm shilling for Vortex, but honestly, I love Vortex as a company. They not only make really good products, but their warranty and their customer service is legitimately second to none. But let's talk about budget real quick, because I understand that not everyone has a very large budget to get into optics. And sometimes the mindset is a little bit backwards, I'll say, because people are willing to spend $2,000, $3,000 on a rifle and want to find the cheapest optic that they can throw on top. My logic with this is you can't hit what you can't see. So why not at least get something that's going to perform well? My rule of thumb for most cases is if you're willing to spend, let's say, $1,000 on a rifle, you should be willing to spend $500 on an optic, about half. So this way you could at least get something in that price point where the performance and the value are going to be pretty good with one another. Yeah, you could buy a $4,000 rifle and a $4,000 optic. Do you need to? Probably not. But again, the option is there. But if you only have a couple $100s to spend on an optic, what is the best course of action to take to spend your money on to get the most out of it? In fact, that's why I started this channel. And this Vortex Venom 5 to 25 by 56 has really struck a chord with me. So much so, I'm not even talking about how good the performance is here at 300 yards, because guess what? You already know what it's going to be like. But this thing has resonated with me so well that it's probably found a permanent home on my CZ 457 Precision. I like it that much. It really is that good in my eyes and does everything I want for a price that doesn't break the bank. It's absolutely phenomenal. And with that, that's going to conclude this review. Thank you all very much for watching. And as always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.